Welcome to Bears Banter. My name is Bernard Muhammad. Tonight on the broadcast, we have Guy Moore, Jay Beasley. We have community activist Talil Muhammad and Keith Floydnoy. Tammy won't be able to make it tonight. She's feeling a little bit under the weather, but so she said, "Hey, she'll catch us next time." I mean, I know it's burning
Feel better.
Feel better.
First lady.
Yeah. Hey, so anyway, what I wanted to start off tonight, as far as this program, this is part 4 on racism in the NFL. We're doing it for Black History Month, and when I kind of look back at the programs, I realized that we didn't really give a historical content why there is for Black History Month, as far as for those who don't know, right? Because some people may not even know why we have Black History Month. But brother Talil, if you could give a brief history of Black History Month.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Briefly, as I can, Black History Month was founded in 1926 by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. It initially started as Negro History Week and originally was celebrated the second week of February.
All right.
So it was initially chosen because it coincided with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, who, at that time period, Black people were allegiant to Abraham Lincoln because of the Emancipation Proclamation. But it was initially also inspired by Dr. Woodson. In 1915, he participated in something called the Lincoln Jubilee, and which was a celebration of 50 years since the emancipation of slavery or the slaves. And it took place. Now, mind you, here we have a little Chicago history here. It took place in Chicago, in Bronzeville. And it was a month-long celebration of Black history, culture, heritage. It was laced with lectures, visual expressions, art. And so it helped to spark Dr. Woodson's desire to have a more organized focus to the history of Black people. Was his understanding at the time that it was launched that the teaching of Black history was essential to the survival of the race. And that's some of the communication, those who've done everything from Kwanzaa and different things through the year, we always talk about the survival of the race. It was converted to Black History Month in about 1969 on the college campus of Kent State University, who the educators and the students there participated in they initially announced that they wanted to do a month-long celebration in 69, and it was first time they did it was in 70. And 6 years later, Black History Month was celebrated nationwide by schools and cultural centers. It was even recognized by President Gerald Ford in 1976 during the bicentennial. And it's now celebrated and recognized around the world in countries like the UK, Ireland, Germany, and Canada. So here we are now. And I want to give a special thank you to Chicago educators. You all really don't even understand how powerful the teachers and that taught us, launched and wanted us to have the culture. We in Chicago, we went to the Black History, we went to the South Museum every year. Ain't none of y'all can say y'all didn't go to the South Museum at least twice a year during school time.
True.
Because that was the process. And it was also, they made sure that we had schools named after Black icons. And they also made sure that we had Dr. King's birthday was always celebrated. And they also made sure that Black History Month, I don't ever remember it being a week. I remember it being 2 weeks, I think, but it never a week. And then we always, Chicago teachers and educators were landmark and incubators for this type of thing. And I want to thank all of them for being so instrumental in making sure that we had our culture and our history, at least here in the city of Chicago.
Man, thank you. That's some good information. I mean, it's a lot you said that I didn't even know at all. I mean, I just could remember in my lifetime, it seemed like it's been a month. So I didn't realize that even in my lifetime. I know it was 2 weeks, but I didn't realize when it went to a month. And I do agree with you. I can remember even growing up that one of the things I remember was the young, gifted, and Black thing that was in all the libraries and etc. But anyway, how's everybody doing? And we'd like to thank everybody who's watching us on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch TV. Hey, how y'all doing tonight? Y'all doing good?
Doing good.
Good.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, so in reference to this here, let's just want to real brief kind of go over some Black History Month thing. So so we have fans that watch from everywhere. As far as what from the information that Brother Talib just shared with us, there's any like Black history fact that you would like to share before we get into the subject? Anything you, Jay, Guy, Plank?
Let's see. What can I think of as far as something?
Guy can always think of something, but no, not.
I can't. I just left work. I can't even think straight.
No,
I know. I remember. Oh, I'm sorry.
The first black man ever slapped.
I'll share this while y'all think about
on the
this.
field.
As far as I'm gonna go to something with entertainment, but it's kind of loosely based on a true story. I really want to suggest to people who are out there watching the program. One is if you could watch this movie called the 24th. Please watch it. It's a real good movie. Just search it on a lot of the streaming channels for free. But basically, this was about a mutiny that had happened in Houston in, I believe, 1970. This army regiment had a mutiny because they was tired of the treatment from the police department in Houston, and eventually it was about maybe 60 to close to 70 armed people in the regiment that were charged with mutiny, and about 15 to 18 of them were put to death. And it was kind of brought back to light, actually, ironically, when Trump was president, some people brought it before him to actually pardon all of them. Of course, he wasn't going to do that, but this is when I first kind of first time had heard of this story. But it's a real good story because eventually what they ended up doing, they killed these army personnel, actually ended up killed a couple of the Houston policemen in this mutiny, and they accidentally killed several of their own white counterparts that was in the military. But anyway, it's called the 24th. It's a real good story. So that's one of the things I wanted to share. And also for Black History Month, Sunday, February 27th, 2 a.m., the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is speaking at the annual Saviors Day. Catch it online. You can catch it on YouTube or NOI.org. Okay.
Yes.
Plank.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that today President Biden nominated Ketanji Brown Jackson as the first Black woman to the Supreme Court. That is a tremendous accomplishment, and that is a Black people's accomplishment. So I'm looking forward to enjoying her being validated as a member of the Supreme Court. That's not just Black women. This is Black families, Black men. So what I've heard is, a lot of Black women say, Black women. I say that's great. And we get to claim that victory as well. We just as Black as everybody else. Okay.
Hey, you know what? My Black history moment is actually it's a movement. It has to do with Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I didn't live too far away from the mosque. I didn't live too far away from the restaurant as well. And I remember something happened, and they all marched in the middle of the street on 79th, and they walked, and I'm driving, and I'm looking like, what the heck is going on? I wish these people heard, and I heard something like, well, Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, and they're protesting brutality or whatever. They're walking in the middle of the street. I'm like, all right, I'll put my car in park, and I'm going to wait. You know what I'm saying? But I remember that. Another thing that I remember as far as Black history, which is interesting, and I tell a lot of people who are younger, you guys don't realize, I know there's some things going on, but you don't realize the resources that you have and the power that you have, because I remember July 4th, 1976, they had something called the Freedom Train. And on this train, they had all these artifacts that had to do with America. And I could be wrong if someone went by, but the only thing I remembered that one Black person had on that train was one of Bob Lanier's sneakers, just to show that he wore a size 22. And I'm like, our people helped to build this country. And I also remember, the other thing I also remember was how militant, even as a kid. I remember I was 6 years old when Shirley Chisholm came on and became a senator. I remember her, and when I saw her, I was like, she just looked like somebody that if they walked up to her and said something to him, I think she'd just backslap him. And then I always had the mindset of thinking that every time she opened her mouth, I just realized how smart she was, and I thought she was great. But I got quite a few more of them. But keep rolling, y'all.
Hey, so I wanted
to just figured out you are 492 years old.
That she ran for president of the United States.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Brother Talib?
I said you didn't mention that Shirley Chisholm, for those who don't know the name, ran for president of the United States, and I want to say she was the first woman.
Woman,
that ran for president, as well as
being
the first black person. No, I'm taking that back. She was not the first black person to run for president.
She was
the first black woman. Because actually there was a brother that ran for president right around 1920 or something like that. His name escapes me. So I don't see, because a lot of stuff in history, they exclude certain things, right? And
you know what?
That it's kind of revisionist history. What's that, Jay? What you got?
No, I was gonna say, you know what? Just to piggyback on what you just said, it's just so much Black history that's not known. Just like you mentioned, the brother, and I know who you're talking about, and I can't call his name.
I can't recall
president. I think that was in 1919 to be president in 1920. It's just so much Black history, and I don't have any favorite Black history things, because to me, all of it is history. As everybody know who really know me, Malcolm X is my all-time favorite Black history person, as people say, because it's just one of those things where the information and the just the smarts and just the story of where he came from, where he was, and what he became. I mean, this dude came from being, in the layman's terms, in the gutter, to being one of the most powerful people in the United States. And he's not the only one. It's just so much in our history that's not told. And it's like not history, his story, and that's the thing that I like about Black history. It's not just Black History Month. Y'all know I tease y'all all the time when y'all be like Black History, or people say like Black History Month. Our history is 24/7, 365. So that's the only thing that I can say about that.
Okay.
Hey, can I ask y'all a quick question? How many of y'all did plays when you were a kid, and then your teacher was like, we're going to do a play on Christopher Columbus, and they asked who it was? How many Black kids do you know that was like, no, I'll be the dude to stand by the tree, or I'll be the dude to drive the boat? None of us wanted to be Christopher Columbus. All our parents and our relatives, when the narrative was, oh, Christopher Columbus discovered America, but we all know brother didn't even make it to the Bahamas, and he went to the Bahamas and went further south or whatever it was. But we knew what time it was, so nobody really wanted to, because we'd be perpetrating a fraud.
Right. I had just found his name. It was 1904.
Okay, we was all wrong. 1904.
Yeah, his name was. Hold on, I just lost my place. Let me go back. I'll come back to it. I lost my place. Where was that? My phone jumped. Hey, Plank. Plank just gave something. Hey, brother Talib, did you have anything you wanted to share?
No, brothers, it's a continuum. Our history and who we are is a continuum. We are the original people of the planet. And as a result of that, all history that pertains to this planet is Black history. So even the history of other people stems out of that. I love Malcolm too, but Malcolm didn't make himself. And who made Malcolm didn't make himself. So we have to see the continuum of our history,
cycle,
and the reason why that's important, because that's what makes it a cycle or cipher, and has it a continuation of things. We're still making history, bro.
Yeah.
Do you know we still got history to be made? We still in a state where we don't have one Black-owned football team in America.
Right.
And we still, when that happens, we're going to be celebrating in the same capacity of like, man, it's the first this. I mean, come on. We're in 2022 with 70+% players in the NFL that are Black, and we ain't got no ownership. That's the problem. We shouldn't be still having first in 2022.
Right. First
in 2022, I agree.
So, hey, let me get a name, then we're going to move on to our actual topic for tonight. His name was Colonel William Thomas. He was from William Thomas Scott. He ran for president in 1904, and he was from East St. Louis, Illinois.
Wow.
All right.
So that's interesting fact. So, hey, so
anyway,
going through the shows. Going through the shows, I know after the show, each show was over. The first show was banning the black players. The second show was general managers, coaches, and etc. Last week was black NFL problem with black quarterbacks. And from looking at their show, and then plus when we talk offline, I wanted to just see, was there anything that any of you had, after you saw the show, you said, oh man, I wish I had said before we got into this particular topic, for tonight. Anybody want to share anything? I know Offline Guy was kind of talking about Kaepernick, which is actually going to fit into today's subject. But any other thing that y'all saw that you might want to say?
No, because I think everything was said. So I don't have anything.
And it's going to spin into, and what's going to happen is with our history, as far as NFL is concerned and our desire for it, we mention one thing, and every last one of us going to remember 6 or 7. This whole show going to be about that. So let's just let it ride with where it is.
So let's look at the what happens a lot of time. We had mentioned in the last show about the quarterback, and I'm gonna start it from there to work it into social justice. Is we start talking about the quarterback and how he has to dress a certain way, etc., a certain image.
Right.
Okay, with the NFL, one of the things that we do know that there's a certain image that the NFL and most businesses want for players. But at what point do the NFL become like what happened with the NBA, where the NBA put in a stricter policy, but more so for players like Allen Iverson, who was kind of more casual and they came to dress a certain way and kind of look like what they wear every day. Hey, I'm not wearing a suit. I'm wearing this and that. I'm gonna wear what I want to wear. And at first the players was cooperating, and then now you have the new generation where a lot of the guys, and once they're making mockery of it. They're wearing a suit, but the suits are sometimes too small.
Looking like pink sea donkeys.
They're wearing dresses.
Right, wearing dresses, etc. So in the NFL, I want to start off with
leave Russell Westbrook alone.
Well,
no, that was Kyle Kuzma.
So where do the line draw at with let's start with quarterbacks, since they're the ones image where there is a protest against something and where they're just a person expressing his own individuality, but they're not really trying to protest against the dress code. Let's start with, like, say, a Cam Newton. That was a big discussion on Cam Newton, that he kind of ran with it. But when you talk to Cam or hear Cam express himself, I don't think Cam actually has a political agenda. I think it was just a personal thing he did. I mean, anybody, because I know it was a thing. What do Cam Newton has on now, right? So do that affect how NFL players are treated the way we might dress?
I mean, to me, it's just like, you play for the NFL, but you're still an individual. And if you're one of those people that, if that's how you like to dress, then I don't see if it's not disrespectful, because the bottom line is Cam's dress, it ain't for me. But if that's what he like, then, and it's not disrespectful, I don't see why it should be a problem. Because anytime I see Cam, I actually laugh. I'm like, I can't believe you got that on. The hat that you got on. I can't believe, you wearing the shrunk, I call them shrunk pants. I don't know if it's a word for it. But,
the word is medium.
It's medium.
Okay.
But to me, it's like, if that's how you dress and it's not disrespectful, then it ain't bothering me. In this time in 2022, it's a lot about individuality. A lot of things have come to play lately. people's mental health, people's mental state. But also with that too, it comes with me. It comes like people just being their individual selves. And as long as it's not disrespectful, let people be their individual selves.
But you know what, though? This is why I say, as long as there's a policy that they have in the NFL, none of this stuff is going to change. Because what happens is the mechanisms are such to where they give you just a little bit of rope, but they rein you in. They think of you as chateau. They think of you as property. Why do I understand it's like with insurance policies. It's hard to insure football players because of the violence and the nature of the sport, which is why a lot of the contracts that they have are not guaranteed. That's number one. And they also know that they have something on you. If you get out of line, they could say, well, we don't like that. And you could say, look, I'm flying my freak flag and my individual flag. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. It's like, well, remember, you have a contract. We don't have to pay you. Now it's kind of like, dang, I got mortgages. In the NBA, it's totally different because their contracts are guaranteed. And as there are some entities in the NBA that are prejudiced, but they have a better grasp of understanding that the reason why we making money is because of these players. If we leave them alone, let them do what they do. But I think as long as the policy is the same, if the policy doesn't change, it doesn't matter because you'll do something as a Black person and you're doing it not from a protester, even a protester standpoint, just because like with a Cam Newton, because Cam Newton is his own guy, whatever it is. A couple other people start doing it, then they're going to start pulling out them policies and saying, hey, well, you know what this says. But until it changes, the policy changes, I don't think it's going to change.
And I just want to address what Jimmy Reed just said. He's like, the NFL don't want you to have a personality. Yeah, I disagree with you, Jimmy. They do want you to have a personality. They just they don't want it to be too loud.
And they want it to be within the metes and bounds of what they're good with.
Right. It's okay to have a personality because that's what sells tickets. You had guys like Ray Lewis, his rambunctious style, and you had a lot of people that, that they personality was big, but they just don't want you to get out of line with it. And as long as it aligns with what the NFL wants, which is sell tickets, sell jerseys, sell all these other things, they okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you think about it from an NBA perspective, the whole dress code came into play because of one player, Allen Iverson.
Right.
Because it wasn't just how he dressed. I mean, he was always clean. He didn't want to wear a suit. He wore something else that he considered accessible. I mean,
jeans and Timberlands.
The larger issue was his hair. So they didn't like the cornrows, and they wanted to outlaw cornrows and things like that, which is some of the same elements that we see in the school systems today. And you still start hearing about, young Black girls having their hair cut because they didn't like the way their hair, the teacher didn't like the way the hair looked. So those kind of elements are still out there. The NBA tried to start out with a dress code specifically to try to restrict that kind of behavior of an Allen Iverson. And if you ask me, it's actually gone kind of crazy with, the Westbrooks and some of the other, it's almost a mockery. But again, if they want to dress like that, go right ahead. But he gets to determine how the individual.
He had a plus though. Himself. And his plus was the fact
that's a good point that you made on hair. Brother Tyler, I can't remember the author. He had a book on Anthony Broder. I think you're familiar with Anthony Broder. And he talked about Black hair being a political statement. Even when people don't think they're making a political statement. So do you think hair and look play a part in perception of Black NFL players?
I was just reading something in Michael Bennett's book called Things That Make White People Uncomfortable. Interesting book. Obviously, he talks a little bit about the NFL, or a lot about the NFL, because both he co-authored it with his brother Martellus Bennett, who played for the Bears for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's been a lot of acronyms for the NFL: No Fun League, Niggas Police League, his sister, Negroes Are Foolish League. Tanya Oliver, who's a husband, played in the NFL for a few years with the Miami Dolphins. And one of the things about expression, we historically, as a community, as a people, have used art whether it be clothing, headwear, all braids, all those things,
language,
as an expression of who we are, because it is a indigenous component to it. Braiding hair, locking hair is an indigenous narrative. And again, we're talking about racism now. We're talking about what racism really is. Racism is not epithets, though epithets are used by racist mentality. Racism is not discrimination, though discrimination is used by racist entities. Racism is power, control, and the ability to manipulate individuals who don't have that power. And for the specific reason of genetic survival, white genetic survival versus white genetic annihilation. So as a result of that, these are things they want to make sure that their culture is maintained. Remember, Colin Kaepernick started wearing braids because of who? Allen Iverson. And he put his braids in his hair, and he was attacked by coaches, parents, his own parents, because they said this is a thug. Who decided that wearing braids is a thug mentality? Who decided that wearing locks means that you were about game banging? Who made that decision about those things? And where is that narrative being given life so that we in turn can think differently about our culture? Ain't nothing wrong with wearing braids. A sister should be able to go to school with braids in her hair without the coach telling her that she got to cut her hair or she can't play in the game. And she's got to, and you put this on a child to make a decision about her, something she loves to do. Y'all remember the situation about the little girl, they cut her hair, something she loves to do versus her hair, which she knows it can change, go back. But she knew that there was something inherently wrong with that because it made her feel uncomfortable. What is the problem with people expressing themselves, especially through hair, but especially through even dress? When Craig Hodges decided I'm going to go to the White House in a dashiki and really a jalabia full guard, and none of his fellow players would even touch the idea.
Exactly. Right. He's out the league after that.
But Dennis Rodman can wear a wedding dress.
They say, Craig, that's you, bro. This is what Scotty and Mike told her. That's you, bro. That didn't mean. Craig was like, bro, this is us. And then shortly after that non-support, he never saw an NBA court ever again. I ran into Craig in a hotel in Indianapolis right after. He said, brother, the Bulls just cut me. I said, what? He said, they just cut. I said, I ain't even see it. And then he never touched the field, never touched the court again. In a lifelong, basically, lawsuit, he finally got back into coaching. They let him on the bench, but it took almost 20-some years. And that took away his prime years as a player. And this goes on in the NFL, and that's what they tried to do with Cap. They took away, listen, they could talk about all that they decided to do with Cap, but Cap decided to
Cap. I know we get. Let's come back to Cap. Because I know we get down another road.
That's my feelings about it.
Okay, well, I was thinking about, and I don't want to get philosophical or deep, but Samson's strength was in his hair.
Hey, right. Jimmy Red, I feel you because I wore locks for 14 years, Jimmy. Jimmy real active tonight. I wore locks for 14 years.
Yeah. And
when I started my current job, it seemed to be a problem with them.
Yeah.
And, I eventually cut my locks because it was my decision to do it at the time. But yeah, it's one of those things where you wear afro, you wear the cornrows, you wear the dreads, and I don't call them dreads, I call them locks because that's what they are. Because there was nothing dreadful about my hair when I was wearing locks. So
absolutely.
It was one of those things where I actually cut mine because at the time I was just like, okay, been there, done that. But it's almost like a fear that they have when they see these types of things. When they see the cornrows, they get afraid. When they see an afro, they get afraid. When they see locks, they get afraid. And it's like, why is my appearance scaring you? And that's what, and to me, that's what it's been. That's what it's been for years.
Okay.
I've got an answer for you.
Without monopolizing, your appearance is a threat to their survival.
Right.
Okay.
That's the only explanation.
It's a threat to
The
their
answer
survival.
that I have for you is that people fear what they don't understand, and because they don't understand what your look means and what your mannerisms is, and the way we talk, the way we dress, it's easy to be afraid of it. I can remember in 1985, I went to the military, basic training, and they gave me a hard time because I had shaved my head bald. Now that sounds a little crazy.
Right.
They were upset and they were mad. Who told you to shave your head bald? And I'm like, I thought they shaved your head when you got to the military.
Anyway.
No, they shaved your head, not you. They shaved your head. It's
no,
a control.
I shaved it closer than what their norm was. So it's just where they look for some normative behavior, and you go outside of what that is. And,
hey,
the bigger problem with that is nobody defines what that normative behavior is.
Right.
Hey, Bernard, before you do that, can I just put some in context? Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, do your thing. We'll talk about it later.
So let's get to the actual topic tonight. And I'm just going to start off with this definition again that we used last week. Systemic racism, a policy and practice that exists throughout a whole society or organization, and that result in a continued unfair advantage to some people and unfair or harmful treatment to others based on race. The definition came from the Cambridge Dictionary. So often we've said this, and Brother Tyler just said the same thing. And I was doing some research because I just heard some other players say the same exact thing. And from my research, and it could be wrong, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going off what I found. Most common thing is that 70% of the NFL is black. Now, I've never really watched the game and felt like 70% of my team or teams I watch is black. So I was kind of like, man, that seemed like more like 60 or something.
60.
But anyway, from my research, it's 1,696 active players in the NFL. 70% are people of color. The number I came up with is 57.5 are actually black. 16.9% are other minorities, including mixed race. So somewhere in that 16.9, which I don't know what that makeup is, somehow they get lumped into that they're black, and instead of it being people of color, it becomes 70% of the NFL is black. Right. But from our research is black players are 57.5%. And in white players are 24.9%. I have the source data listed right underneath there. And I have a pie chart right over to the side. So also this is some of the stuff that I kind of composed from some of our other shows to kind of recap. There's 32 teams in NFL by positions coming into 2022 season. There's 2 black head coaches that identify with being black. Not somebody who all of a sudden that the team trying to make black.
Yeah.
Just so they could check a box in the Rooney Rule. He's still trying to figure out when he became black. So I'm
Tongan. No, you black.
So those are the 2 black coaches in the NFL. You see a picture of them, Lovie Smith and Mike Tomlin. Okay, as far as other coaches, Hispanic or maybe American Indian or Native, 6%. White coaches are 88% of the NFL. General managers, there's 7 black general managers going into 2022 season. That represents 21% of the league. White coaches represent 79% of the coaches in the NFL. Starting quarterbacks. Right now, I counted 9 starting quarterbacks. That represents 28% of the league. And white quarterback is 72%. Then I put this quote from Benjamin Franklin, and I actually got this quote, ironically, that Brother Talib had mentioned Michael Bennett, and I didn't even know he was going to mention Michael Bennett. So actually, Michael Bennett, when he kneeled in protest in solidarity with Kaepernick, he actually one of his teammates, a white player, put his hands on his shoulder, and he didn't kneel, but he just said, "I was in solidarity with Michael Bennett." And then the next day, he went on his Twitter page, his teammate did, and he put this quote: "Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are out as outraged as those who are affected." And that's a comment from Benjamin Franklin.
Yes, absolutely.
So with that said, hey, let's jump into this. So we was talking about
before we go, I'm excited that Brian Flores has a job in the NFL, thanks to Mike Tomlin for getting him on the squad. So while he continues to fight this battle, at least he can feed his family. So I think that's an important thing, just to follow up from the coaches' conversation that we had 2 weeks ago. Sorry to cut you off, Bernard.
No, Plank, that's actually part of what we was going with Black activism. So it definitely actually part of the conversation that he did not drop his lawsuit, even though he got the job. Right. Yeah,
and they tried to get him to sign an NDA and basically sell out. So that's just interesting how that works. They wanted him to sign the NDA and settle out of court, basically, with Miami taking no responsibility and just saying, we're going to give him X amount of money. We don't want anybody to know what actually happened. And he stood up and said, no, I'm not doing it that way either. So, I've got nothing but respect for that man. And the more I hear about him, I get even more respect every time I hear about, what he's doing and how he's continuing that battle going forward, despite everything.
I completely agree.
Hey, so Guy, as far as the Brian Flores lawsuit, what is your feelings on the NFL hiring a black lady to represent them in that lawsuit?
I mean, when there's any type of narrative that we try to create, there's always something that they do. And the one thing that they do, which has gone on for centuries, is called divide and conquer. They could have used any other law firm. They used a law firm with a person who was, I think she was she district attorney or whatever it was. And they knew that some of the black people going to follow her and some people going to be on board with that. They figure that as long as if you have a movement, if they can convince one or two black people that what we're trying to do is moot, then they still have the power. It's almost like a relationship though, man. It's like you may be married to someone, you love your spouse or what have you. She may be this activist thing or whatever, and you might be sitting back in the backdrop like, man, you know what? I don't agree with that, but because I love you, I got your back. As long as they got that tangent. I didn't like it. When I saw it, I'm like, see, look at here, watch what's gonna happen. You're gonna have some people who know her, that know her work, that are familiar with her and seeing what they did. And what happens is, instead of having a clear mind and look at the lens of seeing why Brian Flores has brought this lawsuit, they'll be clouded by their judgment for their support of her. So there's going to be, as long as they keep us split, they figure they have the power. I didn't like it, but it is what it is. Yeah, U.S. Attorney General. Yeah, you're right, absolutely right. But so when I saw that and I showed you the picture and I did that, we were just basically like, man. But that's how they do. They slide up under the table. They do that. They throw stuff to the wall and see if it sticks. And if it sticks a little bit, then they got us.
Yeah, so I was really bothered by that.
You weren't bothered by that point?
I was really bothered by that, because it's an undertone to that they continue to pit black men against black women.
Okay, you just stole my thunder, but you're exactly right.
Yep, you're right.
It's one thing, having one side, one black person fighting for one thing and another black person fighting for something else. But the imagery is that black women are against black men and black men are against black women, and that bothers me to my core. Because at the end of the day, when one of us is successful, all of us are successful. Another narrative that I kind of heard today with Ketanji Brown Jackson, I heard some sisters getting on there saying, great, this is a wonderful victory for Black women. I said, why does that bother me? It is. But more than that, it's a victory for Black people. We have to get to the point where we're no longer battling each other.
Separating ourselves.
We need each other. We absolutely do.
Yep.
So brother Tyler, in your opinion, do you think that was a move or divide and conquer, or was it just them playing chess with us?
I can't wait to hear what he got to say.
Well, whatever you call it, it's strategic, and it's intentional. It's intentional, and so we have to think. Even when it comes down to, we would have valid cases going up against the government for lynchings and different things of that nature, and they made sure that they put judges in front of us that had no intention of seeing our case or hearing our case properly. So now it's the same thing. Let's go get a law firm, that can represent, other words, just like one of the first things that they do in companies. This is linking it to corporate America. FedEx, UPS, and so many other companies out there have Black heads of human resources. They put Black people in front of human resource departments because if there's a conflict toward hiring practices, then the concept is that, I'm sorry, the conflict is that, well, how can it be a conflict with hiring practices when the head of your
is in charge
of your company's human resource department is Black?
All Black people ain't real Black people.
A conundrum. So here she is, it's no different than you get Black lawyers against people in whether it be, like Bill Cosby, different things like that. The purpose of it is to deflate the racial kind of undertones of it, as if somehow this is not a racial move. That Brian's take on this, when she comes up with her evidence and she starts fighting the case, and you say, well, how can Brian's take on this be correct? Because this woman is finding arguments against it. And she's not just any attorney, she's a Black attorney. So it is racial undertones. It is intentional. It is very, very, very deliberate. And we got to stop falling for this collectively and individually. That is not a victory. The victory is that Brian had the gall to launch a lawsuit against this global entity of the NFL. And no one else had done that, even though others have been affected. He's the first to do that on that level. And then now you try to deflate it. That's the victory. The victory is what he did, not what she's doing. She just got a job. She getting paid.
Right.
I
don't applaud that.
And that was my thing, Bernard, when I first sent it to you guys, like, okay, they could have hired any firm, the NFL could have hired any firm in the world to defend them in this lawsuit. And the firm that they picked is the firm with the sister that they choose to defend them against a brother who's actually filing a lawsuit. And I told y'all, I'm like, okay, this is right here. Like guys say, divide and conquer. Their whole thing is like, okay, we're going to find somebody that's going to look like them and represent us. And we're going to see where the chips fall.
Hey, Bernard, and I'm going to even go one step further. I'm going to ask all you brothers a question because all you brothers worked in corporate America. Ask yourself a question. They don't have like a thing about racism at the job. You know what they have? They have something called talent and diversity. Now, with that being said, look at your place of employment or places that you work where this has actually been a position that's been installed. That person that's the head of talent and diversity, how similar is their upbringing? How similar is their current life to yours?
None at all. Not at all.
There you go. What they do is they throw you a pebble and make you believe that it's a boulder. But we sit back and look at it like some people look at it on the surface and say, "Oh, good, we got this talent diversity thing." But I tell people all the time, it's like anything that you deal with in life, look at it in an open mind. And I was talking to one of my people one time at one job I worked at. I'm like, why is this person talent diversity? I'm not saying that you can't be a poor person, didn't struggle and go to Harvard. But when you as a Black person can sit down and talk about 4 or 5 of your closest friends and none of them look like us, when we start talking about doing different types of movements and different things, they know nothing about it. But you got them in a position that they're supposed to notice and help us. But that's just me. Maybe I see too much.
Okay. So, again, when you bring that up, in 2016, Kaepernick actually brought up a protest.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, we're going to go into that, but I want to mention this as far as diversity. In 2017, the NFL started its social justice program. Now, the interesting thing is they still blackballed him out the NFL, right? They're not saying that,
right?
Because that's how you settle out of court. You settle out of court, so certain things, maybe evidence, maybe emails, maybe conversations.
John Gruden,
right? Stuff that won't be subpoenaed.
Dan Snyder. Okay.
Dan Snyder. So, in that effort, how do the NFL come back? And what he was actually trying to bring light to, they brag about their social justice program now, which something that he was actually trying to bring light to. So to me, it's almost similar to, you know what the NFL commissioner saying the NFL is wrong. We haven't had racist practices, et cetera, and we should be ashamed of ourselves. Then he goes out and hire a Black attorney.
Damage control.
One Black attorney.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't need a lot of them. You just need one Black attorney. They can go ahead and hire that person. That's pretty bad. The NFL is not racist, but since its exceptions, we've had a team called the Washington. Yeah.
Them dudes, yeah.
So, I mean, they just got their name changed and taken off. I mean, that's a racial slur. So this ain't even looking at them as being something that's, in the Cleveland Indians. That's not in the same vein as what the Washington's football team was named. So the NFL is inherently racist still, with 60 to 70% of people of color playing in that league. Because
they were so racist. They were so racist with that.
What about the Chiefs?
Well, Chiefs, there's nothing racial about Chiefs. That's talking about an Indian, a high standing member of the Indian tribe. I don't see
what's
that as
racial about
thing.
it.
It's like the New York.
What's racial about it is that
somebody that would be a slur. No, go ahead, Talib.
And see, the thing about it is that you have two things we have to consider. One, as we know it. Now I have some deeper understandings of it, but as we know it, the Native American was literally attacked and wiped out.
Yep.
When you conquer a nation, the first thing that you do is you plant your flag after you beat them.
Yeah.
Right.
And you take their symbols and you mock them. See, America, and this is something that I found out by going to the National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama, in the Legacy Museum, was that you have the flag. America won the war, but they didn't win the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
The North won the war, but they didn't win the narrative.
Exactly.
What does that mean? Montgomery, Alabama still has over 69 markers of the Confederacy all over the city. And you have a city that was where the streets, Commerce Street, where they would sell and sell slaves. And this is in the birthplace of the civil rights movement. And we still have these kind of racial undertones throughout a city. And this is the same thing with this. It's what makes it racial, even though it sounds like a celebration. First of all, you making mockery of a man jumping around a doggone field with no shirt on.
Agreed.
You know, this man, and you destroyed his people. Even the identity of his people? Because you remember that post that I made, but went viral when I said that black people don't have Indian in them. Indian people have black people in them. Indian have black in them. They got upset at that. It went completely viral. I was getting threats in my inbox. Why can't y'all just leave our culture alone? Why you gotta have our culture? I said, because it ain't your culture. You don't indigenously belong to you. Many of you all have been propagating a lie for hundreds of years because you've been allowed to do that. Because if they told the truth about who really are these indigenous people, we wouldn't be talking about, you wouldn't be allowing nobody to dance around in no doggone, you don't see nobody dancing around. A cowboy was a profession. Okay? It was a profession.
This is true.
A chief was a title given to a man who had the right and was doing what he did based upon the hierarchy of the job that he had and the nation that he belonged to. That's different. They call him a cowboy and a chief. That's mockery. That's not respect. The Chiefs ought to lose that name. The Indians ought to lose that name. The Blackhawks need to lose that name. Anybody that's perpetrating the name of a people that you came and you tried to destroy and kill, they all need to lose those names and come up with a name. The Illini need to stop calling it the Illini, which means the men. They need to stop that. They ain't the only ones. We can go on for days and days and days of the misappropriation and the disenfranchisement done by name and imagery. Alone.
Right. Some good information. Hey, Plank, did you want to say something about that before we're going to keep moving along this road?
No, I absolutely agree with them. So
yes, okay. I do too.
So, hey, I do want to point this out as a historical point of reference. When you mentioned Native American, I believe the first Native American to play in the NFL might have been Jim Thorpe.
Jim Thorpe.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
We mentioned in reference to Fitz Pollard on the first show. Now, here's something interesting. This week, we saw a story with Fitz Pollard that Lane Tech High School, where he graduated from in Chicago, is actually going to name the football field after him.
It's about time. Good job, Lane.
And
Tech.
I just want to. And I just want to say, my wife.
Stand Lane Tech. Don't let me have to have a reason to like Lane Tech.
And I just want to say,
that was my rival.
I just want to say, I want to mention my wife is a proud alumni of Lane Tech, and she wanted me to mention this on the show. That my wife is a proud alumni of Lane Tech, and actually one of my best buddies who I actually go to I'm actually a season ticket holder with. He's a Lane Techer.
It bears mentioning.
So you know, congratulations to Lane Tech. That's actually some information that I didn't know. I knew Fitz probably grew up in Rogers Park, but I didn't know he went to Lane Tech.
Yeah, he did.
When you sent that information yesterday or the day before when you sent it, and I immediately showed it to my wife, and I was just like, wow. And she was like, just remember, I'm a Lane Tech alumni, and make sure you mention that. So
we got to get her back because she was in one of the 4 technical schools in high school, and you know,
she was.
So it was us. It was Lane Tech. It was Tilden Tech, and it was who was the other one? It was 4 of them. It was Tilden, Lindblom,
Lane Tech, and
not Gordon Tech. Is Gordon Tech considered that?
Yeah,
it was Gordon Tech. There's another one.
You know what?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I take a lot of credit for some of the things that we bring out, and all of these years they just decided to name the field after Fitz Pollard. Right after we started talking about that for Black History Month.
I
try not to give us too much credit.
You know what?
I'm really not.
Yo, we did that, man. We did that.
Hey,
we gonna take that. We gonna own that. We gonna take that.
Hey, I'm gonna take some credit and run with it because remember after last week's show, I sent y'all a message about I had good times on, and the episode where Elmo was getting ready to marry the football player, and Michael asked him like, why didn't no more black coaches in the NFL? I heard that same conversation.
Yes.
On 670 The Score.
Yep.
What's my man name from 12 to 2? From 12 to 2.
The brother?
Yeah. Lawrence Holmes. He actually duplicated my words. When he was talking to Bernstein and Rahimi, he actually duplicated my words. He was like, you know what? He was like, I went home and I turned on Good Times. It was in the background. And in 1978, Michael asked Keith why it's only why we don't have no NFL black coaches. And I was like, wow. I was like, you listening to our show, dude. You listening to our show.
Right.
Hey, we appreciate it. We like to thank everybody who watched.
Whoever listening, we appreciate
it. Hey, let's give us credit. That way you're not plagiarizing. That's all. That's all.
That's all. Hey, that's all. Hey, so in the 1960s, one of the most famous people as far as protesting, as far as athletes, I would actually say it probably was Bill Russell as far as athletes, but who's most well known for it is Jim Brown.
Jim Brown.
But Bill Russell, reason I mentioned Bill Russell, and I know it's not football, Bill Russell protests in a way that was in your face. Bill Russell, if you was calling him racial names or whatever at a basketball game, and you came down there to take a picture of him with him,
he was going.
Bill Russell would tell you, "I just saw you up there calling me the N-word. No, I'm not taking a picture with you." And Bill Russell was actually the one who actually orchestrated, if my memory is correctly, he orchestrated the meeting between Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and that famous picture where you see
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I got a story.
That was Bill Russell who actually put that together. If I'm wrong, somebody please correct me, but I believe
you're right.
Russell. Okay,
you're right.
But anyway, in reference to Jim Brown was a very stern man that didn't take anything, and Jim Brown
still don't.
Yeah, he still don't. And Jim Brown, one of the interesting things is how his career ended. Was Jim Brown had started filming the movie Dirty Dozen. I believe that was the movie, and they called him and said, "Hey, you need to report back." And Jim Brown, being the man that he is, Jim Brown said, he mentioned how much do it pay? How much is it going to pay?
Yeah,
come back to play for Jim Brown. So to me, he was negotiating with them, and they like, "Well, you got a contract." He said, "Oh, I'm getting paid more to make this movie." He said, "Unless you're going to pay me more, I won't be back." And there probably some other stands right there. But that was a man with an option, and that was a man that, most of us when we grew up, man, we respected Jim Brown a whole lot when they stood in solidarity with Muhammad Ali. But let's fast forward to 2016, and we were talking about Kaepernick, and I know there's a lot of other people that had different protesters throughout time, but we're going to focus here and kind of work our way into stuff that people may want to bring up. So in 2016, in the preseason, Colin Kaepernick actually had been told he was not going to be the starter of the team going forward. They had benched him. He came off an injury, and he's on the sideline during a preseason game. He's kneeling. He just didn't get up. He stayed on his knee during the national anthem. By the time he gets to the third game, a reporter noticed it. And they asked him, I think it was a woman reporter, I can't remember, asked him in the locker room because he was not on the podium because he was not the starting quarterback, and asked him why was he kneeling during the national anthem. Now, if you go back historically for the NFL, the national anthem, I believe, started being played in 2008 or 2009 at football games. It was really more. Now, I ain't saying that some stadiums did not play it, but it became an agreement between the NFL and I believe the Air Force. They wanted to fly some planes over the games, and that's when it became where the players, because if you think back to some of those games, you would see players running out of the locker room. And I should have said that way, national anthem, as far as players being on the field, not playing the national, I'm sorry. But players would be in the locker room during the national anthem, at the most part, other than the few players who came out. So players would start running onto the field when it was time to play. So in 2008 or 9, whenever it was done, is when players started being required. That's what I meant to say, being required to be on the sideline. So this doesn't go back hundreds of years or something the NFL has always done. It was something that was kind of instituted in 2008 or 9 as far as them being on the sideline. So
and it wasn't patriotic.
I thought it was 9/11.
It wasn't patriotic.
I can be wrong.
It was a business.
They did that in 9/11, but as far as it being a requirement, it was 2008 or 2009, one of those years. Matter of fact, it was under President Obama's administration when it became a requirement for players to be on the field. Because players a lot of them would not be on the field because why? They still stretching. They're, and if you remember when you think back on some of those games, when they start making players be out there, a lot of the players didn't even stand still. They was ready to play. They would be moving. Guys would be, like, come on, let's get this going, right? So with that said, he said it was he was kneeling and protest to bring awareness to police brutality, of mistreatment of Black people at the hands of the police. So with that, is there room in the NFL for Black players to be the movement, or are Black players afraid to be the movement? I got that comment from Mike a few programs ago when he mentioned that during this series. Are Black players afraid to be the movement?
I think it's twofold.
I think they're afraid. Yeah, go ahead.
I think they're afraid to be the movement, and I think they want to be the movement. But that whole thing where, like, I got to feed my family type of deal goes into play.
Yep.
And people like us, we looking at like feed your family. I'm like, you making millions and millions of dollars, so it's not about feeding your family. But to me, I think it's a mindset. It's like, do you want to stand for something or do you want to fall for something? And it's one of those things where you got some that want to be in the movement and want to state it that they are for the movement, but you got most of these players, they're not trying to cause no waves. They're not trying to cause no waves. And it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, I understand. Trust me, I understand. But it's an individual mindset. It's just an individual mindset. And you got some that want to do it, and you got some that like, well, that ain't got nothing to do with me because I'm okay. I'm okay. That ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm okay. But you got some that like, yeah, I remember where I came from, and I remember how these people are suffering in this particular area or this particular area. So they want to, and then they don't want to.
But you know what, though? What I'd have to say about from a monetary standpoint, I think a lot of times what we do as armchair quarterbacks is we look at the situation like we'll say, what you talking about, feed your family? You're making millions of dollars. But what people have to also understand, if you like a 6th or 7th round draft pick and you make the roster, you ain't making that type of money. I mean, we're looking at, so some of those guys is true because a lot of those guys won't even have a voice because you're not a starter. And even if you are a starter, you just basically game to game basis. Now, what we're talking about from an activist standpoint, it's like guys that don't want to make waves. We're talking about guys who are potential Hall of Famers, the guys who are all pros, where people are buying their jerseys and they have the power. They don't have guaranteed contracts, but I guarantee you that there were some teams in the league that will say, okay, you're going to let them go for that? Okay, we'll take them. And a lot of them are like, you know what, man, all I want to do is play football.
Yep.
And they don't look at it from that. And I think a lot of times, I was looking at Jimmy Ray said the All Summit when he refused to be drafted, they were behind him. That's another story I could tell you about later because my sister was a member of the African National Congress as a kid. I was very well versed as far as knowing about that. It's so deep But the thing is, I think a lot of the youth now, younger folks, I say nowadays, their level of activism is a little different. They have a lot more leeway to be able to do it. Back then, it was a whole lot different. So when people looked at what Ali did, when it was Muhammad Ali, it was Jim Brown, it was Bill Russell. Who else was it? It was Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Bill Russell. And a little segue into that, my sister, because you had to think about, he was Lou Alcindor. He changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. My sister told me a story about, because she knew Stokely, she knew Huey Newton, all those dudes. And she was telling me a story. She said she went to D.C. and when he changed his name, he had a crib. They had the nation surround his house because of the hate thing. Another thing that people didn't know about Bill Russell. Bill Russell had a truckload of championships. And if I'm not mistaken, his first few years of the league, all he was doing was winning championships. He's your top guy. He is your all-star. He buys a house in Boston and they vandalize his house. Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, changed Muhammad Ali. And just like Plank said, people are afraid of what they don't know. They looked at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and they looked at Muhammad Ali as the enemy. Now here comes Jim Brown. Jim Brown is by far the best player at that time. And really right now, if you want to say, he's probably, they could say he's the best player that ever played in the NFL. Everybody's going to have a different thing. But he had something that they hated. He had power because, number one, he asked how much they was paying. He's like, I ain't coming back. They kept getting on him. He like, I don't care. They were afraid of him because he was able to be his own man, say what he wanted to say, and they couldn't shut him up. They couldn't put policies and sanctions to shut him up.
So, guy, is the term "feed my family" is that a legitimate answer, or is that
no?
Is that just a cover for maybe some forms of fear for retaliation? I
right.
want to dig into that because to feed my family could make you have sympathy because you're talking about, you said the 7-round guys, but they're not interviewing the 7-round guys. Those guys are probably 15 guys.
Right.
What you got?
Yeah.
Do you all know that there's a strike? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
This brings about a larger conversation. So what we're talking about is judgment and interpretation. We're interpreting what these other people's life must be like.
Right.
By the same token, when there are players out there kneeling or whatever, you're interpreting what his kneel means without asking him. That's the same thing as somebody looking at you and looking at the color of your skin or the way that you wear a shirt or whatever, and already thinking that they can assess who you are. Part of the issue there is that really to understand somebody else's position, it requires a conversation. It requires an openness, and we're not to the point that we want to do that. Quick story I don't know if it's going to be a quick story, but I remember when I first started playing football at Ogden Park in Inglewood on the south side of Chicago. All that we were around were black people. The coaches that we had always talked about how hard it was going to be for us to play against white teams. And they talked to us about how the white teams didn't like us and they might try to jump on us and might try to fight us and all of that. So as a young man, that's what I believe white people were like. I had never had a conversation with a white person. The first time I had a conversation with a white person was when I went to Western Illinois and my roommate was a white man. And he and I found out we had way more in common than we had differences. So it's uncomfortable to have these conversations. It's uncomfortable to talk about, but it's absolutely standing where the other people are coming from. So that segues back to this person's trying to feed their family. We don't know how long they're going to play. This guy might only be playing 2 or 3 years. He has to make enough money to be able to last his family several generations if he's good at planning his money or not. So that's us making an assessment of what he's doing with his money and whether or not, that's what he should be doing. So let me get off.
You might got a little static at the end. I'm not sure.
That could go so many ways because I'm gonna tell you something. When people, even if you're a 7th round draft pick, and I just use 7th round draft pick, what you got a contract a 3-year contract or maybe a 4-year contract. Okay.
Right.
That 1 year, you're making more money than any individual. Most of us know.
True.
That 1 year. So I just reject I got to feed my family thing. Like, okay, guess what? We all got to feed our family. You making $450,000 for a season for 17 games. I'm working a year and I'm making $100,000. So that's why I go with the feed my family thing.
Right.
Let's continue that conversation, though, guy. Jay, are you making?
If you came into the league, let me say this. If you came into the league,
go ahead, Russ. Talib, go ahead.
Go ahead, Talib.
I was going to say, if you came into the league as a minimum player, and your
$850,000,
I'm going to be in this league for 20 years, and you're already making the league minimum. That's not a reasonable thinking. There's a friend of mine that I play high school football with named Camino Bell. Camino went to U of I. He was the lead blocker for Howard Griffith. Howard Griffith went on to be the lead blocker for
Terrell Davis.
Terrell Davis,
yeah.
Broke all the records in Illinois. Camino went on to play for Miami Dolphins for about 2-3 years on the league's minimum. He was on the special teams. His roommate was the husband of the sister who wrote this book, Tanya Oliver. Was it something Oliver something? Anyway, so that was his roommate. Camino wanted to be a doctor. He took league minimum. Knew he wasn't going to be in the NFL for long. I'm on the lowest salary in this league, and my agent got to get paid. My lawyer got to get paid, and I got to maintain some things. So he didn't go in there with this high expectations that $400,000 was going to somehow take him for the rest of his life. He had a plan B. Now, there's a strike that's going on. I do believe this is strike. This is the reason why I say all the more reason to protest. All the more reason to stand up when you think that I don't have the ability to take care of my family because these contracts aren't guaranteed. Money's guaranteed, but the contracts aren't guaranteed. So they can cut you anytime for any reason. You can be injured. They don't care because they know that this is a high injury-based game. But at the same time, they can guarantee the contracts. They're still making millions and millions of dollars. They're just not going to do that unless the NFL Players Association stands up and says, we ain't going to play till y'all guarantee our contracts. At that point, they'll probably make a change. The fear aspect is based upon, it is a mindset. There's a poverty-based mindset.
Yep.
If I don't make this money, I won't be able to survive. How the hell are you not going to be able to survive? The Charles Spiro said, I can't survive, take care of my family on $14 million a year. What? You don't understand money management. You don't understand investments. You don't understand how to make your money grow. You don't understand any of those things. If you feel that you can't make millions of dollars, and even if you get half your salary only if that year, you make $7 million out of the 14 after taxes and everybody else gets paid, you're still supposed to be able to do something with that money. Stop buying $10 million mansions when you know that the average NFL career is what, 6 years? Stop
3.5, actually.
Yeah, 3.5 much lower than that, right?
So this is so all the more reason to protest. All the more reason to protest when you have a situation when you know that they have control over me financially, and they'll use that to my disadvantage.
Right. Hey, Brother Tiller, I'm not sure
you want to strike. You don't want to walk out.
You got like a delay going on.
Huh?
I know I was saying, Brother Tiller, you got like a delay going on.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all see it, but I see a delay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, Bernard, could I ask, kind of sort of answer that question?
The man,
about that thing? I think it's I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh no, man, we can't have that, brother. This is an all-black show, man. Say what you want, brother. Just as long as you know. And if you get mad, we got a Thanos glove for you.
Hey, Bernard, I'm gonna try to log off and log back in. All right.
Okay.
Hey, Bernard, I just want to say something real quick about you. Asking about it. I think it's a landscape statement of saying, "Oh, I'm trying to feed my family." And I'm going to tell you something, which is interesting. A lot of people don't look at. Some people are afraid of the future. They look at what happens is you have to think NFL players want to be rappers or musicians. Musicians want to be rappers. A lot of them are friends. They go into this situation like, man, you sold 10 million records and such and such. There's one thing, opulence. Number one, I'm sitting up here. I made it. I'm a star in the pros. I can't be driving no Yugo. I got to get a nice car. I got to get my mama home. I got to do this, that, and the third. What's the second thing? A lot of people are afraid of, and this may crack you up, their idea of making it is making it to the league. And if some of them feel like if they do that and they taking some money out of their pockets by protesting, they lose a contract, what you have people who are activists, they'll look up and say, yeah, you know what, I'm glad you did that and I'm inspired. But I won't say a large majority, but a majority of people, when he come back to the hood, they're going to be like, your boy, oh, you couldn't make it, huh? Oh, look, he was in the league. He thought he was all that. So a lot of times what happens is people use that broad subject of saying taking food out their mouth, but these guys, even the low-end guys, are making as much as some CEOs of small companies. But I think that they're afraid because they're afraid. And then some of the guys that are playing the league don't even have college degrees. And their whole mindset is, man, I got the league. This is what I've been doing my whole life. I want to be a football player. And when they get out the league and they don't have a degree, then they go to a company and it's like, yeah, well, I was a starting safety for the Philadelphia Eagles 3 or 4 years. Say, yeah, but what do you know about administration? Well, I did 3 years of school. And said, what the prerequisite for our corporations? You must have a 4-year degree at a credible institution in order for us to hire you. So I think a lot of time it's a whole lot of other chatter instead of somebody just sitting down looking and saying, hey, I ain't got nothing to lose. If I lose this contract, then that means that my being here has nothing to do with me being a player. It has to do with me just doing what they want me to do until I don't.
So I just have a problem. I just have a problem with people making the league minimum, as Brother Talib said. The league minimum right now, as of 2020, I remember, was $875,000.
Yeah, that's
almost $1 million. So multiply that if you play 4 years, or if you play 3 years.
Yeah. Plus endorsements.
To say, feed my family, I just take that. I just kind of take that like, come on now, feed your family.
Jay, the problem with that, though,
your family can eat.
The problem with that is that you actually have to be on the roster for that week's game in order to get paid. So a lot of players that get these really nice, you think you're talking about the minimum salary?
I'm just talking about the league minimum. I'm talking about the Deion Bushes and the Houston Carsons. Those guys are the ones that's getting the league minimum, and they're on the roster every week.
But if they're not on the roster, they don't get paid.
Okay.
So even though the league minimum is the $875,000, if you weren't slated to play and they took somebody else, some new hot shot, and they put them in the return kicks or whatever, you don't get paid for that week.
But that's the whole thing. I
understand what's going on. Every human being, at the most part, has to do some form of work in order to feed themselves. They may be working for somebody else. They may be working for themselves.
That's absolutely true.
So we do know there are people in the league that are struggling. I mean, just like Gilbert Arenas was talking about, he managed his money so much in the NBA the first few years, he was sleeping at the arena a few nights a week. Now, but that doesn't mean that if you ask Gilbert Arenas if he wanted to participate in this movement, that feeding your family is the reason he's not going to do it, because obviously he did a bad job of wanting to feed his family because he spent all his money and he's sleeping in. His family was not a priority when he was doing all the stuff that had him.
He probably had 9 families.
But it's just
I'm not arguing about the people who legitimately
Right.
I worry about that. I'm trying to see if this is just a phrase as a cop-out at times that athletes use whenever something controversial comes up, when they really don't want to be a part of it. Do Feed My Family gets them in a safe space, right?
That's true.
And the other players even start saying for you, man, that man has to feed his family. Now, in some countries, but at some point,
what are they eating?
Right. What they eating?
How do you advance your own cause when the people who are the most affected at this case are the players, when the great majority of the players have this, you have similar contracts, right? Where, maybe one person got more guaranteed than the other ones, right? Those are the only variations in the contract. One person maybe got more guaranteed. Maybe this person doesn't have as much guarantee, or maybe this person got a short contract, this one got a long term. But other than that, they all know what each other contracts are, and it's similar.
Right.
But every time something comes up that is uncomfortable, and they have collective bargaining agreements, the first reason why they give in is we got to feed our family. So how do you go from the stat that I mentioned earlier, that you're at least 57% of the league, and if you put people of color, 70% of the league. But when you start looking at the people who are managing you, the people who are coaching you are not what you represent. And take most of us our academic environment that we were in. If you live in certain neighborhoods, your teachers probably resembled you at the most part. It depends.
You know what, you're right, Bernard.
Your coaches were your background. So you have people who are managing you, coaching you, who may not necessarily understand you as a person. And so you would get back in when Mike Tomlin was being interviewed to get the Pittsburgh job, he had an interview with the Miami Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins,
Miami Dolphins did not hire him because an insider said he was too hip hop.
Yep.
What do that mean? See, hip hop.
They don't know what it means.
Layman terms.
Right.
He's too militant.
They know what it means.
It was. Hip hop had a meaning in their mind.
Still does.
I know what it means.
You was too black or something for them.
No, you know what it means?
They just used something else, right? They directed it to hip hop to look like you blaming the music. But
but they did it for a reason, because he was too hip hop. He was too hip hop because they knew he was gonna hire somebody like Brian Flores, and he was gonna look at you like what? I mean,
this is what I love about. This is what I love about Mike Tomlin. He knows that he's at the top right now. He's still in the upper echelon of coaching. He's using that power in an appropriate fashion until he don't have it no more. But right now he has it. And I recall, I don't want to make this about me, but I remember there was a situation in college I walked into. We were being taught a humanities course by a white nun at a black college. Go figure, right?
Oh.
And so the first subject matter was African American history, based on certain years. It was dealing with our culture and our history. And I remember when we had our first exam on it, or the final exam of that particular subject, when I got to class late as normal. And when I got to class, everybody was getting berated. And I couldn't understand what was going on. So I learned to my colleague, I said, hey, man, what's going on? He said, man, the grades were horrible. I was like, really? He said, yeah, they were horrible. He's like, you got an A. I was like, I did? He said, you got the only A in the class.
See?
So, okay. He said, well, I said, what did you get? He's a smart guy. He's the guy who walked around, looked like Urkel. And he said, and he had the mentality of Urkel. He was smart as a whip. He said, I got a B, and then there was a C, and everything else was like F's. He said, even if they do the curve, you 96%, 4 points still won't pull anybody up. I said, wow, that's deep.
Wow.
So she berated them. And I listened to her for a minute, and then I stood up. I said, that's enough. She said, what? I said, that is enough. I said, I will not sit here and allow you to berate them. I said, yeah, they missed it. They took an opportunity and missed the fact that the most important subject of this whole humanities course was the one that they loafed on. Not everybody gonna work hard to get good grades so they can get out of here with a C or B after flunking the very subject that was about them. I said, they got it. Leave them alone. I was empowered at that moment. I had the only A in the class. What was she gonna do? That's the way we gotta start thinking. That's what Jim Brown did. That's what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did. That's Muhammad Ali did. We're at the top of our game. We're not going to do anything but support everybody else because what they going to do? Take me out the game? LeBron, what they going to do? They going to ban you out the game? You the best they got right now. You are the vision of the franchise. What are they going to do? The leaders of it have to step up. And I learned there that day. That was emotion that came out of me that day. I didn't plan that. And I said, man, I could get kicked out of here. And she just sat down and she said, okay, next up. She moved on. But I could have been kicked out of class. And I said, you know what? I'll risk it. I'll risk going to the academic department and the student director of student affairs. I'll risk going there with an A and say, this is what I got kicked out of class for having an A. And speaking my mind because I had that A. When you're in power, when you have, that's the time to speak.
Right. So, hey, Plank had a question, and I want to give an example before Plank asks his question.
These leaders and players that are leading.
Yes, you got a delay going on, brother Tyler. Because like right now I can hear
he's freezing up a little bit.
Yeah, freezing up a little bit. Hey,
he's in a Chinese movie. Okay.
Jackson the Marshall. All right, so the show. Hey, I'm gonna give an example, and some people might have thought it was just an act. When some of the Floyd situation happened, Kenny A. Smith, NBA commentator,
Stephen A. Yeah.
During the broadcast, he took off his mic and said, "I can't do this tonight. I can't do this. I think this one the NBA was doing something. But anyway, he's like, Kenny A. Smith, yeah. He's I can't do this tonight. I'm standing in solidarity with my people." And he took off his mic, and Shaq and all of them looked at him and watched him walk off the set. Plank, what's your question?
My question, we can go back and forth about bad protests or should people protest or what have you. My question is, and this is to all of these educated brothers, the other educated brothers that's on the panel with me, what does a successful protest look like? So that's one of the first things I think we need to decide, because otherwise a protest can be something that just goes on in perpetuity with no action or no activities that determines that we achieved our objective. So that's my question to the entire group.
Do you want an example?
Yes.
The bus boycott of Montgomery Bus Boycott.
Montgomery. That's the only
that's the prime example
that I can give you. Out of all the
best example I can give you.
I was born in 1969, and out of all the boycotts that I've seen, that's the only one that I've seen that was successful.
No, I didn't say
what does it look like?
Boycott. So I said, what does it look like? Protest look like? Yes.
What does a successful protest look like?
Yes.
I can't answer that because I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, I will say I've never outside of bus boycott. I don't know either, but what I can say in my mind, I would say this: everyone has to be on board, has to understand. In order for me to win, I have to accept that I can and more than likely will lose. But my desire for my people outweighs anything that you can do to me financially, reputation. But when the smoke clears and we stand back, and if it's one or two people who aren't subjected to what we do, I consider that. But like I said, I've never seen it.
The reason I ask this, at work, I create deliver what's called a proof of concept.
Okay.
And that's where the customer says, I need to see these 5 things or 10 things or whatever.
Okay. I see.
And at that point, I say, okay, I can deliver 4 of these things. And we come to an agreement, and that determines whether or not they're gonna go ahead and spend their money on the application.
Right.
If we don't have success criteria how do we know
what's going to be successful or not? Absolutely.
Right.
The thing about it is, in a setting like that, when you say, what does a successful boycott look like? It has to be everybody in on the same page.
There you go.
And a lot of times, you're not going to have that. You might have 150. I'm using my language. You might have 150 freight conductors. And everybody like, okay, the union say, this is what they're asking. This is what they're offering. How many of y'all going to accept this? And you might have 75, maybe 80, 85, 90. Is that successful? We don't know. But the bottom line is everybody has to be on one accord in order for anything as a protest to be successful.
Divide and conquer.
Well,
everybody got to be on the same page.
What's an example of a successful protest?
Everybody got to be on the same page.
Contract negotiations.
Well,
you initially go out and you say, I want $12 million. The other person says, I'm going to give you $2 million. And you meet somewhere in the middle. That's what determines whether or not that's been successful or not.
Right. That does. And the only difference is there's an individual.
So what happens? See, one of the things I liked about what our discussion is even though we're talking about football, a lot of this same stuff happens in corporate America.
Everyday life.
Everyday life. Yes, it does.
Everyday life.
Even though that's more of a public story when we're talking about these athletes saying, I got to feed my family, because that's their language.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And it's bad language.
I don't know if any of y'all ever been part of maybe going to launch any kind of EEOC complaint against a company. That I remember when I personally was going to launch one in the early 90s with a company. And I went straight to their office, not our EEOC. I went to the actual office. And the first thing they told me was, who's on your side there? So I'm like, okay. I told them the people who seen it. And he said, you know what? Bernard, I'm going to tell you this. Most people are afraid.
Yeah.
Yep.
They have seen what happened. He said, but when we call those people in, they start getting worried about their jobs.
Yep.
That's what you're gonna be. You're gonna be out there by yourself. So if you're willing just to lose your job for this, right? Because he said, you know what? It's no retaliation. He said, it's bull. They are gonna retaliate on you. They're gonna find another way to retaliate on you without it looking obvious.
Yep.
So are you willing to be out there by yourself on this? And if you're not, then just look for another job.
And it's one of those things just to pull activism to it. You got to have somebody on your side, and that's the thing, And
right,
you're gonna be that person. You got to be a strong individual to be like, you know what, this is what I'm standing for. Like Colin Kaepernick did. I'm standing for this. It wasn't meant to be this, but just because I make a complaint and everybody makes it out to like, okay, well, he's causing trouble.
Right.
That's what it's all about. You got to be a strong individual in order to be able, because you might look around and like you say, Bernard, like they said, how many people are standing with you? Because they thinking about like, okay, it's cool you doing that, Colin, but guess what? I can't do that because I got to feed my family.
See, but you know what's interesting, Bernard?
You look at the marches in the 1960s. When you go, I know in retrospect, we kind of tell it in all glamorous way or whatever terms we may want to use. But there was a lot of people in those different cities who was mad when Martin Luther King came. I ain't talking about the white people. I'm talking about black organizations.
Black people,
absolutely. You come down here and you do this, and we're left here to deal with this.
Right.
So that's an example of you advocating for somebody who doesn't want to advocate for themselves. So
that's true.
And
so
they don't want to be, they don't want the consequences of it. So the consequences could be, like I say, let's exclude the people who legitimately they got cut, they would be struggling. But some people who would not be struggling don't want the consequences of it.
You're
the
right.
consequences may not be them being cut from the team. The consequences in today's society could be what? Being dragged on social media, right?
Association. Association. Guilty by association.
I don't know. Brother Tyler, what do you want to say, brother?
There's a movie, I want you all haven't seen it. It's called the Vernon Johns story. And Vernon Johns was the minister that was over the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church right before Dr. King was installed. He stirred up a lot of dirt. The members of anybody who doesn't know, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church is downtown Montgomery, a block from the Capitol building. Rich black people or well-to-do black folks went to church there. They drove cars, they wore suits, they didn't wear overalls, they didn't wear holes in their shoes. They were well-to-do black folk. They did well for themselves. They had good jobs. Doctors, attorneys, accountants, engineers, all kinds of different things. Vernon Johns stirred up the racism that was obvious in the city of Montgomery. They didn't want this. They weren't set out for that. He thought that as the church, they should be addressing that. The church board thought that was stirring up good white folk, getting them all upset. We got to work for these people. Our wives work in their kitchens, in their homes, take care of their children. So we need them. Let's not stir this up. That whole narrative it's illuminated throughout what we see today. It's still and I'm not going to criticize those people, because if you've ever been hit by a whip, you can't talk about how hard that and what that feels like. So for those who got hit by that whip, and for those who saw somebody get hit by that whip, that's a humbling experience. It takes a lot of fortitude to keep going after you see somebody in front of you get whipped to the white skin. And then you say, whip me too, boss. It's not feasible. You're asking for too much from people. So yeah, there is a lot of concern when it comes to money, because we know what it means to not have money. We know that means poverty. We know that poverty means possibly homelessness. We know it means borrowing from friends and family to pay the bills. And then one of us go on social media and say, I need to get some money for my family. It becomes very embarrassing. It becomes very humiliating. It becomes a lot of things. So yes, what guys said about, hey, going back home to your neighborhood and not being a success that you said you was going to be, and all these things, they take a toll on our community and our people that are in those positions. And this is why we got to stop being so critical of them, because we need each other on every level. So we can't say, well, he's just a sellout. He's not a sellout. Just because he don't have the same fortitude as you don't make him a sellout. He may need somebody to lean on to make him stronger. This is where the dignity has to come in. This is where it has to be restored. And this is where we have to start thinking in terms of unity for our community, and not in terms of divisiveness and all these things that help to keep us divided amongst each other.
Okay.
Hey, Bernard, can I speak on something a point that you made?
Yeah, hold on 1 minute, guy. I want to ask a question. Sure. As far as do us as the community, do we assign our struggles, whatever they may be, do we assign them to Black athletes and want them to take on our struggles where they may not think it's their struggles?
Nope.
For example, I'm going to use Colin Kaepernick. Okay, we understand the police brutality. There are people in our community that are athletes may not even understand, like, what was he talking about? Is that a possibility?
Hey, but
it's just a question. I ain't saying we are.
That's a good question, but you know what? I got an answer for that. And I'm going to tell you something which is really interesting. You know what a lot of people look at? I think that's me. Do I have any feedback? Okay. What happens is this: when you go into your community, you're going to have a whole lot of people, and they look at you. Oh, you made it. You did it. And you're like, you know what, man? We getting treated like mess up in here, man. I'm going to protest. I don't care what it is. Instead of some people, like I said before about the marriage thing, I may not agree with you, but I got your back. some people in the community say, no, brother, you can't do that because look at all the great things you're doing for the community. And that goes into another way of some people doing other activists. But let's look at something even more simple than that. As far as the divide and conquer, and you were talking about the whole thing about people being scared and everything else. I think it's also a matter of convenience. Give you a perfect case in point. Every Black person that I know that I've gotten into a conversation with, the first thing that they talk about, they're like, you want to fix this situation? All we got to do is be together. Like with the NFL, if we don't buy, and we know this too, how strong our dollar is. If every last one of us took our dollar out of big box stores and invested in our people, they would give us, these big box stores would give us anything they want, because you know what? We have a huge chunk of it. But what happens? That same person that sit up there with their chest out, man, forget that. We shopping Black. We doing that. 2 days later, you driving down the street, they up in Walmart. It's like, oh, I thought you was part of the cause. You know what they say? Oh, man, but you know, my cousin, I got to make this cake for my cousin. I was going to go to the Black store, but it's a little bit out of my way, so I went here. So like you said, it's always like an excuse or something. But as long as we have that, until everybody just realizes, say, okay, yeah, I know you come in the hood, and I say, hey, brother, how you doing? What's up? You made it. Let me hold $10. Well, where my bank account is set up. Or, man, let's protest. Oh, man, I'm trying to feed my family. I think there is a fear. And I think until, like I said, until people realize that in order to win, you're going to lose, but the loss is going to be much less than the win.
Okay. Hey, Plank, what you have? Oh, it looked like Plank froze.
Plank froze.
Yeah, Plank froze.
I thought we was going to get a Thanos glove, but he froze.
He either froze or he sleep.
Right.
You look like he's sleep. You're like, oh,
right. You know, I just think, go ahead, Talib.
Now, it's one of the things about protesting. There's a meme that I saw a few years ago, and it has you all might have seen it. It's these corporate entities across various guidelines, and it's made in the form of a cartoon, and they're playing a game on the backs of these Black people, and it says all we got to do is stand up. And what it's representing is obviously, you know, it ain't really much. We don't need 100% participation in a protest. We didn't get 100% participation in the civil rights movement, the human rights movement, a lot of things, you know, but we got some results in those areas because of the participation that we got. That's why they sent in COINTELPRO to break it up, because it was successful. It was causing success. And when Dr. King started saying, hey, I got to start talking to more people in my community, such as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and all these other people in Malcolm, I got to start communicating with them more, because we got to start coming together. And then all of a sudden, he became a danger to national security, because now he's got white folks, and now he's about to get the most militant Black folk in the country a part of this. They actually might get some change. So we'll give them a couple of crumbs. We won't put their name on these crumbs now. Because if you look at the Civil Rights Act of 64? Voting Rights Act of 65, Civil Rights, whatever. When you look at the Civil Rights Act, you don't see our names mentioned. When you look at the 13th Amendment, you don't see our names mentioned. That was the whole thing about the movie, the documentary by, I think it was David Duvernay for 13th. You don't see our names mentioned. But when you mention LGBTQ law, you see specifically LGBTQ mentioned in the bill. You don't see Black people's names mentioned. You don't see, slavery didn't happen to nobody else in America but Black people. When you read the 13th Amendment, it don't say free Black people is free, no more Black slavery, as if somehow the whole country was under slavery. That wasn't what was the deal. So what is the fear of putting our name in something, of naming us to the bill, to the freedom, to the entity? And this is what we run up against in this respect. We, like I said, we don't need 100% participation. If half of the players, Black players on each team, took a knee and said, we're not taking this, Cap, we with you. And if you want us to sit out, what was gonna happen? Wasn't gonna be no games on Sunday? They was gonna grab some more scab players to fill in the gaps of some of the stars on their teams. What was gonna happen? They was gonna listen to what it is that has, and we have to believe inherently. that if we stand up, even with a small group, that it's going to have an impact, and stop being so afraid to step with your brother, because you know they're going to come at you. They're going to throw the whip. But you can't be afraid of, you cannot, I think you have a phrase, you can't be afraid, being afraid to be healed can get you killed. Well, same thing. Being afraid to be free can get you continually in slavery. That right.
Hey, Plank, look like you had something, Plank.
No, I didn't have anything.
Oh, okay. We got you.
You got my shirt on. Yeah. I'm sorry. But I will say I appreciate y'all, man. I really appreciate you, brothers, because you know what? We can all sit up here and we can have a forum and we can convey what we feel. Doesn't mean that we have to necessarily agree, but just being 5 intelligent brothers that can sit here, and what happens is, the difference being is when we sit down and listen to each other, we may not agree, but we're absorbing a lot of it. And a lot of times we get a chance to sit back and say, you know what? He was right. And I will be the first person, if I said something and we disagreed and I sat back and said that, I'll be the first person. Hey, man, check this out. What you said, it was wrong. And I think that's very important as well, too. We have to be on the same page, but we also have to understand, as I can look at my brother left or right, it doesn't matter where you came from. We all can look at us and say, you know what? You got $1 billion. You got a piece of bubble gum, but you know what? If we jump in the cab and the cab gets pulled over and say, Ian, get out the car, both of us are getting out the car. And until we can just really understand and say, hey, no matter how much money we make, it doesn't matter where we came from. We black people, money is power, but by the same token, it ain't as much money as having white power. You know what I'm saying? So if we could just even agree to disagree, we could get a lot of stuff done, man.
Okay, so the question we still have is actually a couple of questions, but I want to go back to that question that I did ask. Okay. Do we assign things to athletes that are our struggle that they may not consider their struggle? I just thought that was a legitimate question, because
that is
the average person. Okay, say the average person that I grew up with, their struggle on a daily basis may not be the same as my struggle is on a daily basis. Right. My struggle has changed based off my condition that I live in. But I do think in job representation that people do like to see themselves to have opportunities in management or etc. Some people work in industries where they don't even see the people of their color. I'm talking about black people. They may realize that their industry may only hire 1 or 2 black people at a time, in certain industries. You may have certain fields where you don't get hired in that field in management. And when you talk about the NFL, do black players want to see, black players want to see black coaches? Do they want to see black general managers? Do they want to see black quarterbacks? And at the same time of us asking that question, there are people in our community, when stuff go on, we say, he's not doing anything because this is going on in our neighborhood and he's not putting any money into it. And then they'll publish their record and show what they donate to. And they be like, he's still, you know what I'm saying? It's like they didn't publish anything. That don't mean nothing. He didn't give any money to this guy. Jay, what you have?
It's so funny you mentioned that, because I want to use President Obama as a reference, because when President Obama got elected, not everybody, but a lot of black people was like, okay, what he gonna do for the black people?
Ding, ding, ding.
And it's one of the things where, like, he's not the president of black people. He's the president of the United States.
Amazing. Okay. Right.
What are you gonna do to help yourself? And that's the thing that I wanna go to when you say the players. Are they looking for, are they expecting, are they looking for, black coaches and black GMs? Yeah, they are, but they're not going to make no waves to say that, because first of all they know is I'm still playing. I'm in the NFL. So I'm not going to make those waves. Do I want to play for an all black regime? Of course I do, but I'm not going to make that wave. But to go back to what I was saying was, a lot of people outside of the NFL, a lot of black people in general, they feel like if you have black people in place, then they should cater to black people, which was one of those questions that, you know, came up when Brian Poles got hired for the Bears. They was like, okay, why don't black GMs hire black coaches? And to me personally, I'm not one of those people that be like, just because I'm black, I got to hire somebody black.
I agree.
Right.
Totally agree.
You know, I'm looking at what you bring to the table. Black, white, red, green, or brown. But our mindset as a people, our whole thing is like, he black, what he gonna do for me? Well, you black, what you gonna do for yourself?
I'm boiling down here.
Right.
Hey, but let me just get some out real quick because I know he's about to do it. Hey, Bernard, you ever notice this? In the black community, I think that what happens is you're 100% right. The community expects you because you made it, per se, to the league. They expect you to give money. You don't want to publicize it because you think that it's more important that I can get out here and I can commingle and operate on the low and get more done without interference. Then this report comes out and says, well, Bernard Muhammad, you all-star running back, you gave like $20 million to United Negro College Fund. Yeah, but what about the diabetes? What about your neighborhood? What about you doing that? And they talk all this stuff, and when you start talking about, okay, as a black player, just say you have an activist mind, and you go into the communities and say, look, don't matter where we come from, together we can do anything. They'll be like, no, I don't know about that. But as soon as a little girl got some Girl Scout cookies, guess whose door they gonna ring first? Yours.
Well, Bernard, as far as myself, I can't speak for everybody, but the way I try to make decisions is based on logic and intellect. If you can appeal to logic, to a logical argument, and it make it something that makes sense to me, then you can persuade me to support you.
Right.
If it doesn't make sense to me, I'm not going to be behind it.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what they call a leader.
I
You know,
agree.
a lot of people out here think that you're leaders, but if you get up and say, hey, let's go outside and walk away, and you're the only one walking, you ain't leading nothing. In order to be a leader, you need followers. So and one of the components of that is you need a personality, and you need to have the ability to persuade other people to follow you.
Okay,
That's true.
In fact, that's a very good point. That's why I do argue about Colin Kaepernick kneeling was not successful. Now, because he's not an NFL quarterback, right, which that was his dream, that doesn't mean he wasn't successful. Right. Because one, the NFL, even if it might have been phony or fake, they initiated a social justice program a year later. Okay.
Yeah.
He's making as much money that he would probably be making if he was still in the league.
If he was still playing.
Contracts that he have got.
Yep.
And I say this, that brother, I'm telling you, when you look back on history, he orchestrated, and it wasn't on purpose, I don't believe. He orchestrated one of the most talked about protests where at the most part, he was the only person doing it.
People was mad, man.
They were mad. You're right.
Think about it. Think about how many protesters in the world, if only one person showed up and every once in a while, somebody else at another location, because most time when his teammates at another location did the same exact thing. I'm just gonna use a store. I show up in front of, say, Walmart, and every so often somebody else show up at a Walmart, and I get Walmart to change their policy or start talking about me, and I didn't harm anybody or do anything, and I was only there for about 30 seconds. That's very powerful.
It is.
It's very powerful.
I see you play. I hear you.
Okay.
This is why we have to redefine what success is. I think Colin Kaepernick launched one of the most successful, and we have to understand it wasn't just a protest. Awareness is huge. The ability to be aware is the ability to know what's going on around you So if you need to act in a certain kind of way, you can have an example in front of you. I think Colin Kaepernick and what he did was, whether or not it was something he meant to do, it was something that was intentional. He intended to have a rebuttal. He intended to be anti something. And what it turned out to be, it grew like a lot of things do. Remember, the Montgomery Bus Boycott was only supposed to be 2 days, a couple of days.
Yep.
And then they extended it to a few more days. Next thing you know, it went over a year. It didn't have any, the intention was to get the attention of the bus company, who they had 90% black people riding these buses. And yet they had to sit in the back, and all the things, implications of that. So what Kaepernick did, by bringing awareness to something that that white people believe that didn't really exist, and then that still didn't do it. It wasn't until George Floyd and everybody was sitting at home with nowhere to go on a quarantine and pandemic, and watched this man, and then white folks stood up like, oh my God, is this really what's been going on? As if somehow Trayvon and Oscar Grant and Michael Brown and Daquan and so on and so forth were not enough. So this man had to die in front of the world, for the world to see what black people have been going through, enough to at least question and then say, Cap didn't, and that's why I got so confused when people say, well, he didn't get his job back. Well, he wasn't trying to get his job back.
Right.
He didn't mind if he had gotten his job back. But his intention was to bring awareness, and that was the most free, for that moment. There was 2 free black men I saw. The most free black man in America was Minister Louis Farrakhan, and it was Colin Kaepernick. That was a free black man right there.
Preach.
Hey,
that was a free black man.
I it's supposed to be on my slide. I don't know how I accidentally either didn't save it, but Kaepernick just started an initiative recently. Matter of fact, he just started last week or so, where he's given people who need autopsies. I had to think about it. For families who family members die at the result of being picked up by the police, he's going to pay for the autopsy. So if they wanted a separate autopsy from the
for the second autopsy.
For the second autopsy,
right.
If they having questions about the autopsy that was actually done. So that's a action that he's doing, and it was another one that he has that I wish I had not deleted on my slide that was making reference. Hey Jay, what you had?
Bernard, you don't know how powerful that is. You don't know how powerful of a move that is. Because one of the things about corruption and cover-up is that autopsy is the first line of defense. Do you know they tried to say that I can't remember the young man's name. The autopsy said he had organs in his body, and the young man that was caught in the mat, and they want to say that he died from ways that he could never have died from.
Right, I remember that.
And that young man, and now they coming out and finding out, now we know. Well, years later, now you know that this man was killed. You knew he was killed. Who rolls up in a goddamn old mat and suffocates without nobody hearing them scream? It was. But see, the autopsy, having that second autopsy from an independent source, which costs literally thousands of dollars, it's not cheap at all. For him to have done that, that's a huge move in justice. You see, what we're seeking here is justice. You can't pay me. Brian Stevenson said the opposite of poverty is not wealth, it's justice. So we can't keep giving us millions of dollars and say, well, we're giving you $1 million to go play football. Shut up. Which is what white, quote unquote, liberals will tell us on social media. And if you had the comment section open on this, they'd probably be telling us now right now. Shut up. You're making millions of dollars.
Hey, Bernard,
it's called an autopsy initiative. He started it this week.
Hey, Bernard, one thing that's interesting that I just thought about with Colin Kaepernick, if you really think about it, And I think that it's great that we're able to kind of sit down and we talk about different things. And as we start thinking about it, it starts coming to my mind. You want to know why Colin Kaepernick didn't get a job? It wasn't really because of the protests. He was too powerful, because you know what he did? He basically put the egg on the face of a lot of millionaire black folks who were playing the league, and he set a template. I'm going to tell you what they said. Well, you know what, Colin? If you protest, you're not going to get paid. Well, you know what? I got some good people around me, and they helped me save my money. Well, you know, I know you got that nice car. Yeah, well, I set up an LLC, and I set up a C Corp, and what happened after a couple of years, I wrote it off, so it's not doing anything. And then right after everything started boiling over, he gave like $1 million to a cause. So he did that, number one. Number two, well, you know, I don't know. You know, you got to have a college degree. Well, I got a college degree and I was an honor roll student. I was like a 4.0 grade point average guy. I was a pretty smart guy. They couldn't wreck him with the normal narrative of if you don't pay, you don't play, you're going to get paid. He was that brother that came out and said, you know what, they paid me some good money and I was smart enough to sit on it. So what they did was, we got to get rid of him because it's going to be some more people just like him in the same predicament that's going to get a wind of this and we're going to have a problem.
Okay. Yeah, so when you look at that type of protest, there's other elements that happen other than just kneeling, like what you just mentioned, the individual willing to fall on the sword themselves. And there was actually, he was not the only player that was part of that settlement. What was the player name? The last name is Reed. It's
Eric Reed.
Eric Reed and Kaepernick actually both reached an out-of-court settlement with the NFL, and neither one of them are actually playing right now in the NFL. But there is always sacrifice that has to be made when you want to make change. If you look at it in 1969, Martin Luther King. 69, right? 68. Getting old.
68. April 4th, 1968.
68. He gave his life. And think about that. That was a young man. When you look at, matter of fact, if you look at all us on this panel right now, all of us live longer than him.
He was 39 years old.
Think about what we was doing at 26. I mean, I mean, Todd, some of us, different ones. I've always been an activist in some form or fashion, but I wasn't leading a
nation.
A nation, right? That's
a nation,
right?
With the spotlight on you and etc. But that brother, at the age of, I believe, about 26, was thrusted into
26.
This movement. 26, okay, thrusted into this movement that. At that point, his life was in jeopardy, and his life was in jeopardy every time he went somewhere, and he was willing to pay that price. And there was others like him, that paid a price. And price sometimes, it comes out in different things, but he didn't make any excuses. It was for the greater good, and sometimes the individual, in his case, don't even see what he was trying to do. And that, I know all of us don't agree with what the objective were. I mean, different people have different angles on that. So I don't want to get caught up on that part. But he was willing to make that sacrifice. And his biggest enemy at times were not all the time the white people or the institution. Sometimes it was his own individual. He was stabbed by a black lady.
Right.
Yeah.
A black lady stabbed Martin Luther King in his chest, tried to kill him. So sometimes if you put that on a hypothetical level, some of the biggest people who was attacking Kaepernick were us. Man, that end was no good anyway, right? We even started diminishing his achievement.
Right.
He can't play. He ain't no good quarterback.
He lost his starting spot anyway. He wasn't even starting quarterback when he
right. We're like, you know what, man, he wasn't even that good. Well, how they get to the Super Bowl, man? They just thought, oh man, you know what, he was this, he was really that, he wasn't. So we find ways to justify why we don't want to sacrifice sometime. And I know sometimes we're not in agreement with every movement that come around. You can't be a part of it. That's just a reality of it. And everything, you may not even sympathize with everything that's going on. But I guess what our discussion on it, NFL, I guess one of the difficult things is when I go back to the Benjamin Franklin comment, let me read it again, is, let me put my glasses on. Justice will not be served unto those who are unaffected are as outraged as those that are affected.
That is
that comment is so heavy to me when I really read it again, because one of the conditions is the person affected has to be outraged as well.
Right.
Absolutely. That's not in the comment, but if the person who's affected is not outraged, it's hard to get the people who is not affected to be outraged. And to go back historically with John Brown Reid, John Brown was a white man who was an abolitionist. He was willing to put his life on the line to end the institution of slavery. He was so outraged that he was just going to do it by killing people. And in today's society, they'd call you a terrorist if you did.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, when it was the day he was on due to raid, that I believe he had contacted a lot of slaves to participate. I want to say there was less than 5 slaves that came and met him, and the majority of the people who went with him, and I want to say it was somewhere between 17 to 20 people when they overtook this military. It wasn't even a lot of them. But when you look at it, our point was outrage. He was outraged more than the people that it affected. Do we experience that today, where we do see I'm using us, we're more outraged probably than the NFL players? Yeah, what's going on to them? Guy, what you have? I'm sorry, I not took.
You know what? And kind of segue back to Martin Luther King. I'm not gonna go into names, all that other stuff, but when he got assassinated, there was a specific individual who was supposed to carry that torch and keep rolling. And he was kind of like, man. And here comes Jesse Jackson. He jumps in now. It could be naivety because he was like, 22 years old. Mm-hmm. But he had that passion and he took it and he did his thing. But what was one of the first things that happened in the community? It's like, oh, well, he's just doing this for the camera and stuff. Okay, maybe so. But what he has done in his career, as far as that's concerned, from where he came from, I think people's narrative on when they want change, they don't understand there's a difference between the right change and the right now change. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes you're not going to get the right now change, no matter how much you do it. But getting the right change at least turns the metric around and kind of steers in a certain direction.
What you had, Jay?
Nothing.
Anything, Brother Tyler? We're going to wrap up in a few minutes. Hey,
first of all, I want to thank you, brothers, man, for.
Oh, yeah, you got a delay. I'm like, I don't even see him moving.
Yeah. Go ahead, brother.
What was that?
Oh, I thought
Go ahead, brother.
Something. You had a little delay going on.
You asking for the definition or something?
Oh, yes. I was going to ask you. Definition, wrap up. What is the definition of work?
Oh, the definition. You're looking for something.
Yeah. Well, work. I believe is force times distance. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, the formula.
Yeah, the formula is force times distance. And when you look at this here, when you start talking about social activists, you got to have work. And what force do you have behind you? And can you go the distance? Right? Can you go the distance to get what you want? I guess in sports, it depends on, are you willing to apply the force you need, right? And are you willing to go the distance? So it requires some form of work to get where you want to go. And correct. So when we talk about this and all the subjects that we talked about, when we talked about banning the black players, when we talked about black GMs and coaches, when we talked about black quarterbacks, and now we talked about activism, how do all that work together to get to a solution? And what is the solution we want to do? We really would love to see almost the NFL operate like you understand 57 or 70% of your players are black or people of color, but you're not even acknowledging that that's the case. And and I just think personally, until those individuals demand that in a collective bargaining agreement or whatever way they need to demand it, all you'll probably have is like you got 7 black GMs this year. 3-4 years from now, you'll have 2 black GMs. You'll have the next hiring cycle, maybe 4 or 5 black coaches get hired. You have 5 black coaches, and then the next hiring cycle, you'll be down to 2. You'll have quarterbacks, because you could go back to when when Kaepernick was in the league. There was just as many black quarterback startings as you got now, and then if you go back a few years ago, there was much less. So it's kind of a cycle that kind of goes back and forth. So anybody got closing remarks?
Let me say this real quick, brother. I don't know if I'm still delayed or if I'm current or
no. You on?
You on time now, brother.
One of the things that this is what a lot of companies did. They in a lot of corporations they had black components of their union. Mm-hmm. You have the Port Association, you have the Black Port Association, and those entities help to focus in on the specific interest of that group, which is something that I think the NFL and sports in general, I think it really should be a sports component. I've been trying to find an inroads to sports for a long time as a community advocate. Is finding what Spike Lee did some years ago when the rookie ball players would come in and he would speak to them and give them a sense of consciousness and what to do with your money. What happened to that? And why couldn't that be extended to the NFL, Major League Baseball, or any other professional entity where black people are in high levels of activity? I think there needs to be a black professional sports. I hate unions, but union for the purpose of the argument, organization that allows there to be a certain level of consciousness taught, money management skills, cohesiveness toward a universal understanding of what's happening, not just in the NFL. Again, we could talk about, well, the NBA, the NBA got 1 black owner, so let's not act like they done something horrifically, just something just on another level. They've had 1. Okay, maybe 1.5, and some minority ownership. They still haven't done a good job of a league that's 70-something, 78% black. They still haven't done a good job. When we say 70% black, Bernard, and you said, well, these numbers here, well, we know that biracial is black. We understand there's certain entities. I include my Mexican brothers and sisters in this. So when we look at these things from that perspective, we need a collective. We need to somewhere find where is there a collective way that we can pull, because these men represent, and women, because if we go to tennis, we got Venus and Serena and Simone and Naomi. These people, they represent a part of our 1%. And when we get control over our 1% and not the companies that they work for or the organizations that they make money for, when we get control over that 1%, those that have this money, that have this ability, volume cash, then we will have an ability to make systemic change in our community. But we have to control our elite. And right now, our elite are entertainers, athletes, performers, people in that entity. And that's an area that we've got to find some level of cohesiveness. And I don't know if an organization or something, but I'm just thinking it has to go across the board.
Okay. Great. Well, what'd you change, Jay?
Nothing. I got one thing. I just got one thing to say, Bernard. When you talk about the strength in numbers, I'm gonna give you an interesting thing. We talked about this last year. Remember when they had all them different types of looting going on, and they tore up the stores in the black neighborhood, and then some of these knucklehead little black kids went to the Hispanic neighborhoods to try to tear it up, and they was getting whooped. But then some regular people were coming over there because their pharmacies were torn up, and these young, like some of these young Hispanic men, the gangbangers, whatever, they start beating people up. But what ended up happening, and we talked about this, I'm not going to go into the whole names and all that stuff, but you know what I'm talking about. 2 people, Hispanic brother to black brother, they came together because they were like the guys, and they talked, Hispanic brother came up and said, you know what, we're very sorry. You know what? We didn't expect this stuff to happen. And guess what happened immediately? All that stuff went away. Did you hear anything about that in the media? No, because they want to see as long as there's these two entities right here, it's a news story and it's something to perpetuate. But when they start seeing these two entities do like this, they'll do everything they can to avoid it. So people look at it. You may disagree, but if we're doing this together, you get what you want. It's going to be incremental steps, but the bottom line is whatever you do, just like making a drink, you make a drink and it's like, oh, this drink is good, but it's missing something. Your passion of trying to make that drink better, you don't think about the work you put in the drink. You think about making the drink better. And if we can kind of like roll that around to what we're doing, we'll make some incremental steps, but then we'll start being heard. That's my hope and that's my prayer.
Okay, great information. Yeah, I'm sorry we missed Tammy tonight. Tammy actually was going to talk about punitive things that the NFL do for players who violate whatever, the NFL policy, either on the field or off the court. And she was actually going to address the fairness in those, how punishment is kind of given out to players. So she was going to, she had found a report where they dealt with that, but unfortunately, I don't have a report to give that information. But we'd like to thank everybody who watched us for the last 4 weeks for Black History Month. And this was a very informative show to me. I learned a whole lot myself personally. I've watched the shows, and each time I was like, man, that's deep, right? And I'm like, man, I didn't know that. And so I know with us sitting on here, and we all know each other, we have, we talk all the time, but we don't really know what each other going to say.
Right.
And so we're not, at least we're not lying or exaggerating when I'm saying they're, I'm looking at them sometimes like, wow.
Yep.
And not only just on this topic, but other topics. And that's amazing. And we hoping that people out here watching the show. Matter of fact, Christy's father, Christy went to college with me. I heard she told me her father loved this Black History Month series. And I didn't get a chance to ask her what her father's name, but thank you, Christy, father, for watching us. He said he looks forward to watching it every week. So that makes us feel good. So we're about to close out.
Hey, before we do this, and it's apropos, I got to thank this brother Talib for coming on the show, because you know what? Absolutely. I do read certain things and I do things, but, I talk about and I listen to it. This is his life.
Yeah.
And anytime he started talking about stuff to us, I'm sitting up there listening. I'm like, wow. We need brothers like you to live to come out here to carry that message, man, because you know what? The thing is, what they do to you, they shoot bullets at you and do all types of stuff. Instead of drop you down, it just bounce off, man. But we need people like you. We love you. We appreciate you. And thank you for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
That's why I left corporate America about 12 years ago.
brother. I want to thank you for coming every week for 4 weeks with us. Because all of us, you're the main host. We appreciate brother has set his time each week.
Thank you.
I will also like to thank Christian Jones, who have come on and sat with us on a couple of shows. I'd like to thank Mike Alden, who comes periodically, probably every other week on some of our shows.
Hampton.
D-Hamp, who came on, participated in this series. And those who actually sent us information, those who posted information on the Bears Banter page, which was, informative, where it kind of gave, I know me personally, information where I said, oh, let me click that article. For everybody who kind of contribute to us putting this together. And, and I'm going to say first, man, I'm missing football. So
right.
This keeps me talking about football in another way when there's no games going on.
Right.
Oh, I got a suggestion. How about another show for a hit or miss show? Bring Tammy on with that intel. We can have some people and just get on the board and say, hey, if you guys got something that y'all want to talk about as far as the Black athlete, as far as things that are going on, even if we miss Black History Month, post it in. We like to chime you in here and we can vibe off that. Because like we say, a lot of times we do a lot of intel with football and different things that we do, but we feed off a lot of stuff that y'all do. So post something in the group. Let's do another show.
Right, because we got the comeback coming up. We got the draft. So yeah, it's never ending. It's never ending.
Right.
It's
I
never
agree.
ending.
Hey, so for you football junkies, peace.